Alice, Chris Norman, former lead singer of the band Smokey. He's worked with the likes of ABBA, duetted with Susie Quattro on the hit Stumbling In. He even created the England football team's World Cup '82 hit This Time, and he's now getting ready to mark 45 years as a musician in the business. Chris Norman, welcome along to the afternoon show. Really good to have you here.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
So, how are you marking your 45th year as a musician?
Well, with this new album, I'm doing loads of tours and, got the album coming out, and so I'm going to be promoting that and everything. So it's just very busy from about now until middle of next year, I guess.
Okay, and what's the album called?
The album's called There and Back.
Mm-hmm.
And
what's the kind of theme on it?
Well, it's all original songs, all new songs that I've written either on my own or in conjunction with somebody in my band, or I wrote a couple with Pete Spencer, who was the guy I used to write with in the Smokey days. And it's just a bunch of new songs, which are kind of what I'm doing now, same kind of voice, obviously, with just and a very sort of stripped back, and we played it in the studio kind of as live as we could, all, with eye contact rather than doing it in piecemeal. And so it's got a very kind of natural sound to it, and I'm very pleased with it, really. How
do you find being solo rather than in a more collective band?
Well, it's I've got the best of both worlds, because I left Smokey in 1986 when I had a big hit single called Midnight Lady in Germany, first of all, which was #1 for 6 weeks, and then it spread throughout Europe, and they didn't release it in the UK, but it went all over the place, Italy and all kinds of places, and it gave me a career as a solo artist. So I left the group then and pursued that, and I've been doing that ever since. I put out loads of albums and do tours all over the place constantly, really, since then. So I have a band who have been with me for quite a long time, and I'm the front man of that band, obviously, the Chris Norman Band. So it's kind of like the best. I have that kind of camaraderie on stage, and yet I've got the say. I've got the final decision about everything. So when you're in a group, especially if you've been with them since you were a teenager like I was, it's all kind of like, well, I don't want to do that. Well, I do, and it's like that, But when you've got a band of your own, you kind of have the best of both worlds, really.
So you kind of enjoy greater control with what you've got now.
Yes, because and I've been doing it for so long, and I know what I want to do next and what I won't do and stuff. So I don't want to have to make it into a committee decision.
Just picking up on a point you said there about success in Europe as a solo artist, especially in Germany, and perhaps not quite getting the same or not being as well known here for you as Chris Norman. Why do you think that is?
Well, I've been absent, really. The record companies that I started with as a solo artist didn't put the record out in the UK. For what reason, I don't know. Whether they didn't have a good contact in the UK, or whether the people they did have contact with weren't interested, I've no idea. But they didn't come out. So while I was busy churning out records and having success, to a lesser or higher degree, depending on the time, in Europe, and doing tours all over because of that success, doing concert tours and different stuff, there was nothing happening for me in the UK. So people only know me for the stuff that happened years ago with Smokey. So that, it's like I haven't been around at all, but I have. I've never been away, really. Just not in the UK.
Does that hang like a bit of a millstone then?
It used to be honest. In the 90s, I had a lot of trouble with it because I was putting out albums and doing TV shows and tours and everything all over Europe, and I used to keep ringing up the record company and say, "What's happening in the UK?" And they say, "It's not coming out in the UK." And I used to say, "That's where I live, It's my home." And so it bothered me for ages, but after a while I thought, look, my career's doing all right everywhere else. If the UK doesn't happen, I can't force it, But now and again, I think to myself, well, I'll give it another crack, and I put an album out like this one, and I think it should do well. If people got to hear it, they would like it, I think, because they do in other places. And there's not really that much difference with people, really. Music's music,
So when you think of your 45 years as a musician, when have been your happiest times then?
Well, different times. I couldn't pick one period, because obviously the beginning of it, when I was a young kid starting it, was just doing it for fun, and getting together a school group and everything, and that was exciting. And then, of course, it was then we had the hard slog of working up and down the country for ages before we had our first hit, which was in 1975. And then, of course, that was very exciting because we took off. We had a huge success all over the place, and we were travelling to America and to Australia and all over Europe and doing concert tours, and it was very, and we had like 16, well, in some countries 18 hit singles and like 9 albums that were successful, and so it was a very exciting period, that. But to be honest, now I'm older and I've been doing it longer. I feel like I know how to do it better, so I kind of enjoy it now as much as ever did, really.
Yeah. In terms of Smokey, and you kind of touched on this when talking about your solo career just now, but in terms of the hits, who wrote most of them then? How did that work?
Well, we were lucky to be with Rack Records, first of all, which was Mickey Most label, who was a very successful guy, and that label was very successful. And we were also with Chin and Chapman. Mike Chapman was our producer. And they wrote a lot of the hits in the beginning because they were so good at it. They wrote for Sweet, Mud, Suzi Quatro, everybody. And later on, Mike Chapman wrote, for The Knack, who produced Blondie, had songs like Simply the Best for Tina Turner. They were just great hit writers, So we were writing from the beginning when we were with them, but we didn't get, although some of our songs on albums were covered by other people, like Oh Well was a hit, and Baby It's You for Racy, and that was songs that me and Pete wrote, but we weren't getting our own songs as singles because we couldn't compete with these great songs that Chin and Chapman were writing.
So did you get a say over the songs?
Oh yeah, we did. But I mean, really, at the beginning, no, not really. At the beginning, we were just kind of we'd go in and we'd write like 11 songs for the album, and then they'd write 1 or 2 as well, and then that'd be the single. And that was the way it was at the beginning. But as we went on, of course, we got more say in how the things went. And eventually we did start to release songs that we like, Mexican Girl and Run to Me, different songs that me and Pete had written became singles too. Yeah. But it took us a while,
Was it that sort of wanting to do your own creative thing that led you to wanting to do some of your own solo work and put out your own tracks?
Not really, because it was just that by the time I left Smokey in '86, I just felt that there was not much I could do really within the group, and I'd been wanting to do a solo thing really since I'd done the duet with Suzi Quatro, which was Stumbling In back in '78, '79. That gave me a taste of solo thing, something outside the group, and I'd done a couple of solo records in the sort of early '80s, and then I got this chance to do that, and I just was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to either be away all the time, with doing the solo promotion and tours on the solo thing, and then I'm going to be doing the Smokey stuff as well. I'm never going to go home if I do both, So I had to choose, and because I've been wanting to do the solo thing, I decided to go for that.
When did you get married? Were you married at that time when you were touring around doing everything?
I got married when I was 19. So back 1970 I was married. Yeah, I've been married all through my whole career, really.
Was that tricky, touring and everything that's going on, and competing demands everywhere and just being away?
Tricky in a way. My wife, when I first got married, we were both very young, and we had 2 kids, and then later on we had more kids. So she was left behind to look after the family, and she had to accept the fact that I was off touring, but she knew that I had a huge ambition to become successful in music and everything, so she supported me really.
Yeah.
And so I guess there was tough times, but she was very good with that.
And what about your children? Do you kind of look back and think you did miss a bit of?
I did, especially in the 70s. My older 2 boys, I missed a lot of that. But then we had 3 more kids later on in the 80s, and I was at home more then because there was a period between about 87 and 94 when I didn't tour that much. I was doing writing and recording, but I wasn't touring that much, so I was at home more for their childhood.
Yeah. And what about Top of the Pops? Because you were on that, it seems quite a bit. What did that involve? What was that like?
Well, it was great because you knew I watched Top of the Pops from being like 14 years old when then 64 or something, and when the Beatles and all that lot were on, and that was great for me. So being on it eventually in the 70s was like, wow, we're on Top of the Pops now, And you go the first time you do Top of the Pops, and there's people sitting around. You think, oh, look, it's so and so over there. People are already famous, and you're doing it for the first time. And Pants People. It's all like, wow, And I did Top of the Pops with some great people, Bing Crosby. I met Bing Crosby and stuff, So David Bowie, all these people, and so it was a buzz to do it. Eventually, when you've been doing it a while, and we did Top of the Pops, I think about 30 times in the end. You get used to it. It's like anything else. And it was just a big studio with different stages set up in the corners, bit like Jules Holland thing is now, except without the liveness of it, but more poppy, obviously. But it was good fun, and you knew that if you had a record out and it was getting played on the radio, and then somebody said, "Okay, you're on top of the pops this week," you knew it was going to go on the chart the next week. So it was a great thing.
There's been a lot of attention on the culture in the 60s and 70s. You know, stories about Savile and improper practice and all of that coming out. When you read the papers about that, how do you reflect on those times?
Well, I'm amazed, to be honest, because. You know, I mean, the 70s was like any other era, but I didn't hear or see any of that stuff. You know, and all these people that keep talking about now, I didn't see that, you know, and I met some of these people, you know. I didn't know them very well, but, you know, you met them when you did like a radio show or a TV show or whatever, you know, to say hello, how you doing? But, you know, I'm amazed. It wasn't like that, really. You know, it paints the pictures if everything was really horrible and sordid, and it really wasn't. It wasn't like that as far as I remember.
Yeah. In terms of groupies and big fans, how did you deal with fans who kind of would faint at the sight of you, people who completely loved you and wanted to be with you?
Well, I still get that. What do you mean?
Let me rephrase that into the correct. How do you deal with that?
Well, you know, we had our moments. We did have things like people screaming and fainting, and especially when we were in the 70s, when we were like teeny bop stars or whatever we were supposed to be called in those days. You know, I remember in a hotel somewhere, a road tour manager getting a call saying somebody was going to throw themselves out the window if she didn't see me immediately, you know. And I had to go there because I thought she was going to do that. And there was things like that. So, and, you know, people chasing us and screaming at us and stuff. But, you know, when you're in your early 20s and you've been watching the Beatles, you think, wow, you know, we're the Beatles now, you know. So it's a great fun. But I still have a lot of fans. And you do get sometimes strange letters and things from people. But, yeah.
What with strange requests or sending you odd things?
Yeah, sometimes. And, you know, just sometimes... You know, people saying things that you think, wow, that's a bit weird, you know, but it's just...
Things they might like to do, that sort of thing.
No, not so much that, no, just, yeah, sometimes.
I think we release his afternoon show. So is there any chance of a Smokey reunion tour?
No, I doubt that very much, because Smokey is still, you know, with the original bass player, still going around, and the other three of us are doing our own thing, and I'm quite happy with the way things are with me, with my own band and everything. So there's no plans, but you never know. You never can say never. Being
part of a big-name, successful band, has it changed your life for the better?
Yes, I think so. You know, when I was young, I always wanted to be successful in the music business, and that helped me to do that and to continue to make music for the rest of my career. So without that success in the 70s with Smokey, I wouldn't have been able to do that position, you know.
Yeah. This is a little bit cheeky, but how do you deal with the possibility that you might not be quite as popular again?
I don't mind. I really don't mind. As long as I'm popular, it's like I think of myself now as like... you know, an older person in the music business, you know, and I used to watch Johnny Cash before he died, and he you know, he had a huge success when he was young, and then as he got older it became less, and then he came back with some big albums again, and the main thing is to just do music, and if you can do current stuff, that's the main thing for me. If you can keep doing current stuff and still sell tickets to concerts and tour, then, you know, I'm happy with that. I don't expect to be the next big thing anymore, you know. But as long as people buy the albums and come to see me concerts, at least some people, that's good enough.
What would you like to happen next?
Well, I'd like this...